Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. Well, I found this interesting post on the reddit.com website. They're from the subreddit called The Truth Is Here, and it's apparently involving all of the quote-unquote truth associated with shadow people. Now, those of you that followed my channel here for a number of years know that I've dedicated a small handful of these videos to this subject. They always get a good number of views, so I thought I would post this one here because it presents a different set of theories, angles associated with shadow people, what makes them tick, what they are, how to get rid of them, and so on. And so I thought I would just present it here as is and then let yourself decide on this afterward. Still a very interesting subject when it comes to the world of ghosts and spirits. I love being able to find stuff like this to talk about with everyone else. So again, it comes from the subreddit Truth Is Here from a user called 26LT, and they titled theirs as The Truth about shadow people. Let me know what you guys think about this user's theories and reasons associated with this subject, and then anyone that has had encounters with them as well. I'd love to hear what your comments are there too. So here's what they state. I often hear a lot of people throughout, not just all of Reddit, but the entire internet as well, asking about shadow people, sharing their experiences with them, among other things involving their presence, what they do, what or who they are, and more. The word truth in the title is in quotes because, while I do not know if this is in fact the truth about shadow people, it is the closest and most reasonable explanation I have come up with. And I have done loads, and I mean loads of research. If you're by any chance wondering why I have spent so much time doing said research, it simply has all been driven by my pure fascination with these entities in general and deciphering the mystery of them and what has evolved into somewhat of an underlying passion of mine. Knowledge is power, after all. Now, some people say shadow people are interdimensional beings. Others say they're aliens. Maybe they're ghosts, angels, or perhaps even demons. The list goes on. Now, believe me when I say that I do not want to make this a whole religious thing. I am not a superstitious person. I do, however, like to say that shadow people are jinns, spoken of in the Islamic Quran, synonymously known as the jinns, that can actually take on any form they want. In other words, this is simply what I believe, for the most part at least, that many have claimed to be the truth. Until we get more information, however, we won't get much further in terms of deciphering the underlying and actual truth behind them. I'm just here to provide some of that information I've heard throughout the grapevine. Shadow people are jinns that were here before humans and are made of smokeless fire. Villadec, they are not actually shadows, but instead are made out of the same material as the heat on top of a flame. They live here on Earth among us, but cannot be seen simply because, and only when, they choose not to be. They only show up if they feel as though it is necessary or if they are called upon. And as for those who encounter shadow people involuntarily, this is because they are greatly attracted to people and or locations that radiate or are associated with negative energy and or emotions such as fear, anxiety, anger, inadequacy, etc. If your mind is under their influence in any way, shape, or form, that potentially unlocks great sensory and or emotional channels that attract them as well. When they can be seen, most of them keep to themselves unless they have been called upon or provoked. Their lifespan is unknown, but could range anywhere from hundreds to thousands of years old, though interestingly, they merely have the mental capacity of about a 10 or 15-year-old. This is why a lot of things they do are relatively inexplicable and can be incredibly difficult to interpret. Shadow people are actually more afraid of us than we are of them, but they are intrigued by us at the same time. Some can actually fall in love with humans, which would be a cause for contact. They also love it when we try to theorize about them, such as what I'm literally doing right now, because they actually never want people to know their truths. This is why I'm making this post in hopes of uncovering what might be physically, but I could potentially literally be attracting them right now by making a post like this, just to put that into perspective. Some people claim that humans have used shadow people since the days of Babylon for black magic, which is another topic in of itself. Some shadow people can in fact be spirits or demons, as some may say. Alternatively, many people have documented benevolent encounters with them to the point of absolutely insisting that they are harmless. I see people say this far too often, to be honest. They do, however, and factually speaking, have a dark agenda towards mankind, and while they may not always attack you physically, their war with you is one of the soul. So how exactly should one go about getting rid of them? Well, first of all, if you find yourself encountering a shadow person or people frequently and they are not doing anything, such as by mostly just standing there, menacingly staring you down, etc., then you probably don't have much to worry about. Odds are, though, if that is happening to you, then you are radiating a relatively large amount of any of the negative emotions I mentioned earlier. The best thing to do is simply ignore them, and they usually go away. If this doesn't work, a lot of people claim they mentally or even verbally tell them to leave, sometimes even swearing them out if necessary, especially in the form of shouting at them, which works as well. Another method includes that of spitting at them, which is usually more effective, for shadow people are repelled by human body fluids such as saliva, blood, urine, tears, etc. They are incredibly sensitive to sound, for it is my understanding that shadow people can hear the quietest of utterances of both your conscious and subconscious thoughts, even including your memories. You can think of it like misophonia. This is why, in terms of banishing them, some success stories I've heard involve shouting at them, or perhaps even singing one of your favorite songs as loud as you can at the sight of them. Not only does this work because of how astronomically sensitive their perceptions are, but it also radiates positive energy that they clearly want nothing to do with. Thus, should you encounter any, if you imagine something such as a loud, piercing scream, they might just cheese it out of there. If that does not work, you could try emitting a high-pitched frequency out of any speaker you have at your disposal, unless, of course, you are dealing with a shadow person whom means some serious business. They will almost always not be able to handle it, and it will send them packing. Some shadow people are stronger than others, so while some may be easy to get rid of, others may require more of an aggressive approach. With that, there is also the act of praying, which to my knowledge is one of, if not the most belligerent method of banishment. It might work because using this method in any way certainly means you're on the right track in terms of expelling them. But from what I have heard, although I personally have never tried this myself, the most aggressive and effective way of ridding you and of your home of shadow people is that of reciting certain religious verses in their native language that cause them to quite literally burn in hell. A lot of people also talk about encountering one very hostile shadow person in particular, usually seen wearing a trench coat, a top hat, sometimes, though rarely, a briefcase, and other times bearing red eyes. Although any shadow person can have red eyes, they just aren't as common. They are, however, always malevolent. The entity in question and whom I'm referring to is known as the Hat Man, and I sincerely promise you that he is not friendly, not even a little bit. If you see or have ever seen the Hat Man, then I feel very sorry for your misfortune. While he usually doesn't attack you physically, he normally comes around during very low, dark, sad, distressing points in our lives in order to do what many other shadow people do and feed off of your negative energy and emotions, which in turn makes him stronger. He also sometimes serves as a representation of an upcoming negative event, such as the death of a loved one or an accident of some kind. The short version is, he is definitely not good news. That about sums up everything factual that I know about shadow people. Forgive me for making this post very long, but I can only make a post so short while summing up the majority of what I have gathered about shadow people. Hopefully this answers and or explains some things you've been wondering about, as well as any concerns you may have had. Again, just to clarify, I am by no means a superstitious person. I do not know if there is a God or gods, heaven, hell, afterlife, or any of that. Shadow people may or may not all be jinns, but aside from that claim, I firmly believe that nearly everything else I said rings true. So if anybody would like to dispute this claim or have or any that I have made, share their experience, mention something that I neglected to, or just have comments to make, I welcome your input. I will also gladly answer any underlying questions you may have, which I haven't touched upon here. Then that's it. That's everything that the user 26LT mentioned in their post. So pretty fascinating stuff. Let's go ahead and let's talk about that here. First off, lots of information, right? Lots of angles when it comes to this. Nothing really definitive, but more on the lines of what could have been, like when it comes to this thing, as far as the notion of shadow people. I've first heard about them, like most other people, when it came to the world of Art Bell. Art Bell did that that episode on them that kind of went viral. In fact, he would probably be considered the person that put them on the forefront. And then ever since then, anytime I come across any news or articles or information associated with them, then that's when I definitely love hearing other angles. One of the things that stood out with regards to this is the fact that the user posted that they acted with a mental capacity of about a 10 or 15-year-old. I remember reading some stories about shadow people, how they almost are like jokesters. Like there was one encounter that someone posted where it was one that was hanging upside down. Like in other words, they were on the ceiling, but they were upside down, and they were laughing. Like they were laughing at the poor user, whoever was seeing this. Like they were laughing in an almost comical manner, like an exaggerated manner, where they were holding their chest and they were puffing and like laughing hysterically, stuff like that. And made me wonder, like, who would do something like that? But hearing the mental capacity of a 10 or 15-year-old could explain something along those lines. And then there's that theory that I was mentioning earlier in some of my other videos about them also gravitating towards negative emotions. So if you have that happening where you're in a bad place or some kind of type of depressed mode, that they could basically come out because they enjoy feeding off of that. So this kind of also correlates to that. Then there's also what this user is mentioning about talking about them and so on. I still don't know 100% on that part. I've done several videos on them. Obviously, I haven't had any encounters, but again, I'm pretty firm when it comes to what is and not allowed in my apartment. So if anyone else knows more information about that, then please post those comments as well. But otherwise, as far as like just summoning them and like the user said, inviting them, no, nothing like that. Absolutely not. Like that's completely no way. That's not going to happen. But otherwise, just talking about them, it just seems like it's something else that's still up in the air. But otherwise, interesting stuff. No. And then, of course, they covered the Hat Man, the one that is the most evil of the bunch. How, again, it reiterates that having this sighting is a very bad thing. First time I've heard, though, that it could be something involving a negative event, like something involving a death of a loved one or some kind of accident. So all around still interesting stuff. But let me know what you guys think. Post those comments. Anyone have any particular encounters as well? Again, post those comments too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye. Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest 20 things you didn't know about video. I thought I would do this second one here, again to give everyone an idea of how this playlist will work out. I wanted to do a topic, something that I've mentioned before in some past videos, but I thought it would be great to showcase it here. Some of those past videos included examples of this topic along with some encounters that people have had, but this will be a great way to do an amalgamation of all those things and then some within one new video. So in this case, I'm going to talk about 20 things you didn't know about shadow people. That's right, you've definitely heard me talk about this subject both in the past, couple of years back and so on, up until the very present. So in this case, I'm going to feature 20 facts or interesting topics associated with shadow people. I'll give my own thoughts and opinions as well. And as always, I'd love to hear what your own comments are too. So let's go ahead and let's start this video off once again talking about 20 things you didn't know about shadow people. And these are, as always, in no particular order. Number 1. There are multiple versions of shadow people. I mention this up front because there are a multitude of different versions of them. I mean, you'll see what I mean later on in the video. Just like there are different versions of people throughout the world,
there are different versions of shadow people. There is not one single universal one that seems to just frequent many of the other people surrounding the world. So, and some of those encounters go way, way back. We're talking back into several hundred years, and then others up until the very present. So, to this very day, this is definitely a relevant topic that lots of people encounter. It just depends on where you are, because there are, again, multiple versions of them throughout the entire world. Number 2 is this. Some have been known to be bad. These are the bad shadow people. These are the ones that enjoy feeding off of people's fear. They either create the fear themselves, and in a self-serving cycle, it's almost like they just keep enjoying it from whoever their victims are. They enjoy terrorizing people as well. They enjoy coming back for more too. People have reported multiple visits from these bad shadow people. They also actively seek certain situations. These include people that are in some downtrodden situations, meaning those that are in a depressed mode, those are that are in an anger type of mode, those that are just in an overall bad state, both in their mind or in some cases on a physical level with their body. These seem to attract these bad shadow people. So definitely these are the ones that you do not want to encounter, because again, it's a self-serving cycle of them seeming to enjoy this type of fear that permeates from you. Number 3 is this. Some have been known to actually be good, but I put that in loose quotations in this sense. They're not necessarily out there to help people, but more along the lines that they're there as precursors to something bad happening soon. So they could be seen as a warning. Some examples include shadow people being around others that are close to dying, like something bad is going to happen to them, and so the shadow person comes out, and somehow people interpret it as being a notification that, oh wow, something is going to occur to this person. So not necessarily, again, something wholehearted and 100% good, but more on the lines of a simple warning of what's to come. Others have been known to just be lost souls that are just looking around an area looking to leave, in other words. So they're still somewhat on the good side. They just are stuck at a location, and then they want to be able to just go elsewhere, but they can't for any particular reason. And yet others on the good side are known to be familiar to the people encountering them. In other words, these could be friends or family members that have passed away. They're looking to revisit either the people or the location that they're at. And so that's, in another sense, the type of good shadow people that some people encounter. And yet others, and this will be number 4, are known to be truly neutral. Not good, not bad. They're just living, if you could even call it that, as is. So in other words, they're just minding their own business. They have their own spectrum that they almost just seem to be living in and operating in, and it's complete, and they are completely oblivious to us altogether. Or if we do occasionally see them, they pay no mind to us being able to do so. This is almost like an accidental sort when it comes to encountering these shadow people, because they're just basically going out there doing their own thing. It's just every now and then we occasionally see them, but they don't care with that regard. So again, that's at least a neutral stance associated with shadow people. Number 5, they are mostly seen through your peripheral vision. This is very important, because trying to see a shadow person directly, face to face, is almost impossible. Very rare circumstances of someone being able to actually look at a shadow person dead on straight and having it done successfully. Instead, most encounters seem to be out of the proverbial corner of your eye. That's the one where either they're to the left or the right of you. You think you see some movement, you think you see something there, but once you turn, it's gone. It's almost like once the shadow person is quote unquote caught in that vision, that direct eyesight, that's when they either tend to immediately flee or they actually disappear, with this disappearance being related to your direct eyesight. So in other words, somehow that your eyes operate whenever you look directly at them causes them to disappear, but moving your head side to side, it causes them to reappear on a peripheral vision. I remember, in fact, doing an encounters video recently with regards to that, how the user was in the kitchen and she could see the shadow person through the corner of her eye, but when she moved over, like moved her face over to that direction, it would not be seen. But then when she moved back, it was there still. So interesting stuff with regards to that peripheral vision. Number 6 is this. Speaking of the way shadow people move, there's various versions or behaviors of how this happens. Some, as I mentioned earlier, are seen moving very quickly, like they immediately flee a location. It's so quick that it's hard to discern that they were even there in the first place. We're talking like Roadrunner, a Wile E. Coyote type speed. That's how quickly they move. Others are seen moving much more slowly. Like, in other words, they're moving in an almost underwater motion, as if they were physically moving through some water itself. And yet others are seen moving in a bizarre, almost quick, jerky set of motions. Those would probably freak me out the most, because there's just something unnatural about seeing something along those lines. You're already looking at a shadow person at the first place, but then seeing them move in an almost Silent Hill, jerky set of movements, that would definitely take things to a whole other level. So at least with regards to that, those are some of the various version of movements that shadow people have done. Number 7 is this. They can be seen either during the day or the night. There does not seem to be any discernible rotation among them. So there's no needle pointing more towards the day or the night itself. If anything, it just seems to be almost 50-50. I've read and seen on a lot of the other shows, the paranormal shows and so on, where people have mentioned seeing shadow people outright during the day. They see them in their homes or they see them where they work, and they have no problem seeing them during the daytime, but they're also frequently seen at night too. Speaking of locations, that not just ranging from homes, like with regards to the kitchens I was mentioning earlier, but the rooms in of itself, basements, attics, it seems like anywhere in the home is open to a shadow person, but anywhere outside as well, ranging from locations such as cemeteries, that's where people have seen them to abandoned hospitals as well, to even out there in the fields, like, in other words, out there in the woods, in the forest. So trying to find the shadow person, it's almost where it's practically anywhere you'll have a chance to do so. And again, whether it's the day or nighttime does not seem to matter in that regard. Number 8 is this. They are also seen in mirrors. Mirrors already have their own unique status. It's almost like their own portal. Some people sometimes wonder when they're looking at a mirror if they are the real person or if the real person is behind the mirror itself and we are the illusion. But there's something about mirrors, again, having that strange portal status, especially if you face two mirrors directly in front of each other. That just seems to almost increase that portal status. But yes, shadow people have been seen in mirrors. Black mirrors are another set of mirrors that have those type of features involving shadow people. Haunted mirrors as well also frequently have those too. One of those you could find there at the Zach Baggins Haunted Museum. I've been there. I've seen the Bela Lugosi mirror too. You're given a few moments to look into that mirror, and that's where you're supposed to see something, which includes shadow people. Now, I haven't seen anything there the times that I've been there, and I've seen directly into the mirror, but that doesn't mean that others haven't. So again, mirrors having to be are another area that shadow people are reportedly seen. Number 9 is this. Some shadow people are alluded to as being ghosts. So in other words, more on the paranormal side. Ghosts that haunt either a particular location, and as I mentioned earlier, just can't outright escape, or these are ghosts of someone that met a tragic fate, like something involving a death, through a battle, through an accident, an explosion, anything like that. And so they're there in that location, either reliving the last few moments of their lives, again, as shadow people, or they're trying to get out of that location, and sometimes they do, sometimes they don't interact with the people that they come across with. Those that don't just seem to do something involving a repetitive motion, and that's again more along the lines of what ghosts do as well. So whether shadow people and ghosts are unanimous or they're the same thing, it's hard to tell, but at least that's one angle. Number 10 is this: other shadow people are alluded to being demons. So this is more on the lines of the biblical side. This is something where, if you go by that notion, then these shadow people are truly some of the bad ones. These are the evil beings looking to actively harm people and then create fear, that fear that I was mentioning earlier that they almost enjoy feeding off of. These are the ones that take things to another level too by actively harming people to the point where they almost cause people to stop breathing, choke them outright, sit on their chests, make them feel as if they can't move, or in other cases, force them to not move, either through some form of sleep paralysis or something else. These are the active bad ones that can cause true harm to some people. And the way to usually get rid of them or to get them to leave is to recite some kind of Bible passage. And there have been encounters that I've read too that when this happens, it causes those shadow people slash demons to leave in great anger. Like, in other words, they were forced to leave and they weren't happy about it. Number 11, continuing with the alluded things, is this: some shadow people are alluded to as being aliens. So going into the world of aliens and UFOs, this is another angle that ties to it. Apparently, these are aliens slash grays that are visiting the earth, but they're doing so in, for lack of a better term, a camouflaged manner. And in this way, they're looking as a black mass or as a black being, just again, pitch blackness, to cause the person that accidentally sees them to see them as something else. So in other words, not as the actual alien slash gray, but as something else. And this is because they're still actively trying to make sure that they're invisible during these visitations. But every now and then they are caught by us, either again through the peripheral vision or by direct eyesight. And when this happens, we're not going to see their true nature. We're instead going to see them as shadow people. So there's that angle too. And then number 12, again, talking about how they're alluded as being other things, is this: going more towards a sci-fi level. Some shadow people are alluded to as being time travelers. That's right. Apparently, there's this idea that anytime you see a shadow person, that it's actually a distant human in the future looking to take a peek into the past. So they're using some advanced form of technology, whatever that is, obviously something that is far outmatching like whatever we have today, in order to take a look at their quote unquote ancestors. And when that happens, they're able to see us and not interact with us really, but try to again take a peek into how it was like in the past. And then every now and then that technology slips up, for lack of a better term, that causes us to accidentally see them. So if you want to go by that particular angle, they could be us in the far distant future, just going back in time and trying to see how we were living back in this case, 2022. Number 13 is this, talking again about some of the variations of shadow people. Again, they have so many different features. I'll talk about some of them here. Number one is this: the reason they're called shadow people is because of their darkness. We're talking about the darkest blackness of black. Like if you were to take a pitch black room, you would somehow have the shadow person still be even more darker than the room itself. People that have described looking at them see it as the most blackest black that they have ever seen in their lives. Another common feature is they're usually about human height, although some are a little bit taller, in the 6 to 7 foot range. They are usually almost predominantly male as well. In other words, distinctive male features, although on a very, very rare occasion you do run into a female shadow person. They mostly stand upright, but a few have been seen squatting about throughout the rooms that people interact or see them as well. And yet others have been seen as being smaller in size, either, let's say, a smaller version of a shadow person or an outright child. And then some of them have been known to have both red eyes or also yellow eyes. Some of them have no eyes at all and instead have been seen with like a big, creepy grin of some sort. And yet, even others have been seen with nothing, not a single thing. Like you can't see anything with regards to their face. It's just one big black face with no eyes, no ears, no mouth, nothing. And yet, even others have not even been seen as having anything. More on that here in a minute, like when it comes to it just being one big black mass. But yet, others have also been seen interacting with the viewers. So, most have been pretty stoic. They'll just pretty much interact by themselves or occasionally just look and stare at the user. But others have been seen pointing towards the person itself or laughing at them. I remember reading one encounter where it would look like the shadow person was having a horrible, like a great time on their end, but it was causing so much fear in the person, and the shadow person was just laughing, laughing, like, and it was that laughter that was very exaggerated, like shoulders just hunching up and down, and then the head moving back and forth in great laughter at the fear that they were causing. And yet others have been seen outright charging towards the person, towards the user themselves. So many different features with regards to that. That just touches some of those, at least with the more common ones. Number 14, let's talk about their popularity. It seems like if there was one turning point when it came to shadow people, it was the Art Bell show back on April 12, 2001. This was a show where Art Bell, started to talk about this subject, and on the show, he had a Native American elder named Thunder Strikes. Little did they know when they were doing that show that it would basically open the floodgates on the topic of shadow people. It was almost like everyone was experiencing them somewhere throughout the world, but everyone thought that it was just them, like it was just themselves. They had no idea that others were also doing that. They didn't realize that they weren't alone when it comes to these type of interactions. But hearing it on this popular show, this Art Bell show, it's like those gates open and everyone realized, I am not alone. And so once that happened, everyone started to be talking about them, and it just took on its own life. To this day, now you'll see movies, TV shows, you'll see plenty of books, not to mention all those online websites dedicated to them. All of it, if you wanted again to point towards one area, it was after that show, the Art Bell show featured this subject on April 12th, 2001. Number 15, let's talk about the physical characteristics of shadow people again, is this. Apparently, both the physical world and even gravity itself have no effect on them. When people have seen them or interacted with shadow people, they have seen them again walk or practically float through anything. It doesn't matter. It could be a wall, it could be a door, it could be a tree, it could be anything. It does not matter. They just simply go through those items as if there was nothing there, or in other cases, they just outright disappear. And in other cases, people have seen them go straight up into the ceilings, and then obviously when that happens, it's clear that it's not something from this world. And even then, when people try to follow them into an area that they know would have been closed off. So in other words, if it was a regular person playing some kind of weird trick, all of a sudden they're not there anymore. So they know that this was something else other than an actual person. So those are at least some of the ways that these shadow people can basically bend the laws of physics themselves and have this ability to walk or flow through anything. Number 16, let's talk again about even more variations of shadow people, this time their clothing. So some have been seen wearing discernible clothing, including cloaks with hoods. So almost like it's straight out of a Lord of the Rings type scenario where the hood is over the actual, if you could call it, head of the shadow person. And then they have a long billowing cloak as well. And then in other situations, and this is the rarer one involving female shadow people, that's where they dress something associated with an old hag. So in other words, it looks almost like an old witch. You can tell because of the clothing associated with it, like the dress and so on, and then maybe even the hair, if you could call it that, again, being befitting of an old hag. And yet others have been seen wearing a hat. More on that here in just a minute too, because I'm going to definitely feature that on a separate slide here. But yes, those are some of the actual physical characteristics involving clothing. And yet even others, as I was mentioning earlier, are seen as nothing. They're basically looked at as being one large black mass. So maybe one big ball of blackness just floating out there within the person's view, or in other cases, it's more on the lines of black mists. So imagine something like a swirling mist having an almost alive characteristic. That's yet another variation of shadow people. Number 17, again, continuing with even more versions of shadow people, but outside the realm of quote unquote human ones, is this: animals. Apparently, there are indeed animal type shadows. And what this means is this: there could be shadow dogs that people have seen. These are the ones that apparently lead the pack, too. These are the most common type of interactions. One of the more famous ones includes the black shuck, which I've talked about on my channel before. And again, that leads to the idea that they are there almost like as a warning or an allusion to something bad happening soon. But if you thought that that was it, no, apparently there are black shadow cats as well, black shadow birds that are seen too. Get this, black shadow rats as well. And then finally, black shadow spiders. So if those of you that already have an aversion to spiders, imagine seeing something like this involving a shadow spider jumping about your room. That'll definitely make someone want to leave that area and never ever come back afterward. Number 18, I just spoke about this a minute ago, but again, I wanted to mention a separate video or separate slide for it. This involves the notion of the shadow person known as the Hat Man. This one is the most notorious type of shadow person there is. If you had to basically sum it down to one that most people talk about and most people tend to fear, it's this one, the Hat Man. This is because the Hat Man is considered the most evil one of all. It's said that even just being in the presence of this Hat Man, like in other words, let's say you see the shadow person, Hat Man, and then you cover your head with your blanket, it's not enough. Even just being in the presence of him causes someone to instill the greatest fear that they've ever had in their life. It's that type of presence. There's just something about being around his aura that causes people to just have the worst type of fear that they could possibly imagine. And the thing is, no one knows why. No one knows who this Hat Man is or why they are so evil. But one thing that is almost universal is that multiple people have seen this Hat Man throughout multiple parts of the world. It's sporadic, like it's hard to know exactly when or how or the reason and rhyme associated with its appearances, but when it does, it definitely causes the greatest, most evil fear that people have had. So definitely something that you want to avoid. You don't want to have this kind of interaction. This Hat Man will just apparently just make its presence known and just loves staring at someone as that person is encountering the most frightful encounter ever in their life. So number 19 is this. Remember, I was talking about the floodgates that opened up with the Art Bell show. Well, part of that involved this. There are now entire communities dedicated to the topic of shadow people. So you can go to multiple websites and then find an almost unlimited set of forums and web pages dedicated to this topic. And those include ranging from interactions, lots and lots and lots of interactions that people have had, to frequently asked questions, to even footage, photographs, videos, some of that stuff you've already seen here on this video, and then also multiple other type of different items that you can find there too. Quite possibly the best website for this is shadowpeople.org. If you ever want to go down a wormhole involving how many interactions there are with shadow people, you'll see there hundreds and hundreds of such pages. So you'll definitely have hours that you can dedicate there and not even finish it, but it'll give you an idea again of the multitude of these type of encounters that people have had, and it all stems from these communities that are dedicated to this very particular subject. And then finally, number 20, when it comes to last year that you have 20 things you didn't know about shadow people, it's this some shadow people, and this is very, very rare. So if you happen to have this type of encounter with this specific attribute, count yourself almost quote unquote lucky. But some shadow people have heard, I'm sorry, some people have heard shadow people actually make sounds. That's right, they actually do have a sound. If you're wondering how they sound like, well, apparently when some of them have been known to mimic a scream, so in other words, their mouth, if you could even call it that, is open, almost as if they're about to scream to the person slash user. It's supposed to sound like either creaking wood, so imagine wood that's being almost snapped, or even static. That's another creepy thing that apparently comes out from the shadow person's mouth, to finally even a bellowing wind. So if you think along those lines, that you won't hear like actual words. Instead, you'll hear almost like sound effects coming from it. I don't know about you, but that's going to definitely freak me the F out when it comes to not just seeing a shadow person, but hearing something like this, especially the staticky sound, again, alluding to the world of Silent Hill. Then I'm gone at that point. But that's pretty much it. There it is. Those are the 20 things you didn't know about shadow people. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Any other type of items or things that you think should fall here within the video, post it in the comments below. If you have any encounters as well, share them with everyone too. Post it as well. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.